You've probably heard or been told the notion that we are our own worst critics. And although that may be true for some people, it is definitely not the case for everyone. As a point of contention, many people, when confronted by the police with a crime, are quick to deny any culpability or any knowledge of it and try to escape any kind of consequences whatsoever. For my own part, I know that is the case. 2 Sundays ago, I was headed out about 30 minutes before the services. I got notified I needed to pick up 2 people and bring them to church. So I went out to pick them up, and as a course of my rush to get there, apparently I didn't come to a complete stop at a stop sign. When the cop stopped me, I asked him where it was and thought about it and thought, okay, well, it's conceivable. Maybe I didn't. I wasn't really paying all that much attention. The point of the matter is whether I was or not, I have rolled through a stop sign before. And so whether I earned the ticket that day or I earned it another time, I earned the ticket. And if he'd given it to me, I would have had to confess that I earned it. Maybe not that day, but at some point in my life. So for my own part, I can say that I'm my own worst critic. Most people are not. They are their own best defender. They will explain away everything and do whatever it takes to get out of any consequences for what they do. As a consequence, I am very uncertain most of the time about what I regard as my state of grace. I'm not really sure sometimes how God regards me or what he will think of me or how merciful he will be to me. In fact, sometimes I think about that part in the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus teaches that with that judgment we judge, we shall be judged, and wonder if he's going to be able to forgive me because I'm unable to forgive myself. I have a different memory from most people. I remember things as if they happened yesterday, and so for me, every good thing that's ever happened to me, as well as every mistake I've ever made, is something that my brain knows is in the past, but can't tell how long it is in the past unless I sit down and try and think about, okay, well, I was 12 then, so that would be X number of years in the past. It feels to me as if it was something I did yesterday or last week or last month. It feels very current, and as a consequence, I have a difficulty sometimes letting the past go and getting over my past, getting over hurt in the past, especially those that I cause or contribute to myself. And so when people talk about your disposition and judgment, when they rack and stack each other in terms of their virtues and their vices, many people, I think, are prone to overestimate their actual final disposition, regardless of the fact that they claim to be their own worst critics. And I often surprise my friends when I tell them that I am not so certain where I will end up, but that I'm more likely to give other individuals the benefit of the doubt, including people who have done sort of egregious things. Because I don't know what happened in their minds, I don't know what happened in their heart. I know what I know, and I know that he who sins against the greater light receives the greater condemnation, and I know better. Most of the things that I have done that would count as sins or transgressions are mistakes that I have made. They were things that I was ambushed on, or I was unprepared for, or I didn't really realize the gravity of the circumstance. But there are at least 2 instances I can think of right this moment where I weighed the options. I was aware of what God wanted me to do, and I didn't care. I did what I wanted for me in the moment. And then there's a lot of little things, like I know he probably doesn't want me to eat as much chocolate as I do. Not because chocolate is evil, but because health is virtuous. And as a consequence of eating all that chocolate, I am probably not in as good a health as I could be, and therefore not privy to the blessings that I could earn. And my close friends all believe me to be this great man of virtue. That's because they don't know everything about me. They don't know about the times I lose my temper, the things that I say in anger, the things that I say out of judgment, the times when I mess up, the times when I speak evil of the Lord's anointed, the times when I am light-minded and laugh loudly, the times when I laugh at inappropriate things, the times when I look at inappropriate things, the times when I don't do appropriate things, the times when I shy away from responsibility and accountability. All they know is that I am trying to be on my best behavior all the time. They do not know what it's like when I'm not. Very few of them have ever seen me in a weak moment, and most people probably never will. And so as a consequence, I am less certain of my final disposition in heaven for the fact that I know myself, I know my flaws, I know my shortcomings, and that I'm really inclined to be critical of and unforgiving toward myself. And I'm not sure if God will regard that with the mercy and the grace for which we hope, or if he will be bound by that, if that is a true statement, and have to judge me as harshly as I judge myself. Maybe you have been in one of those people who have had a difficult circumstance and you have been critical after the fact. I did it after my dog died, for instance, about the times when I could have and should have spent more time with him. I know I had family members who felt that way when my grandparents died, felt a little bit of guilt at living nearby but not visiting more often and being a bigger part of their lives, not writing letters back to my grandmother, who was disinclined and unprepared to use a computer. And so they missed out on opportunities. And those are the kinds of things maybe with which we beat ourselves over the head and are critical of ourselves for things that we omitted from our lives that should have belonged. For the times I wasted time doing nothing instead of time I could have spent with my dog, or working out, or working on my house, or visiting family members, because those are things that were probably not terribly value added. So it begs the question, when you think about people that you know as they die and the things that people say about them, it's illuminating for me to read opinions of people about other people that I have heard of. This is not to get into the nitty-gritty of this individual's personality. This is to use him as an example, so I don't want to get into the weeds of whether you support him or not. But almost exactly a month ago today, a famous talk show host died unexpectedly of lung cancer. He was a lifelong cigar smoker, and so it comes to me as no shock whatsoever that he died a little bit earlier than one might have expected of lung cancer. That is the kind of behavior that elicits that kind of response and that portends that potential future of lung cancer, or some sort of cancer at least. And there was a very balkanized reaction to his death. That's what I don't want to get into. There were people who were celebrating his demise, but of course there are people who claim that they love people. And it's interesting to read what people who claim they love others say about them when they die. And that's to what I want to draw your attention now. So this is a news article reporting the commentary from Rush Limbaugh's widow regarding him, and I just want to draw your attention to this section here. He loved you. He loved his radio program with every part of his being. Instead, we know our Rush is in heaven, encouraging us in the same way he always did on earth. And I read this, and there is a truth in this and then a question in this. It is very certain, if you've ever listened to Rush Limbaugh, that he loved his radio program and he loved his loyal listeners. That doesn't mean he loved everyone. But when Catherine says she knows Rush is in heaven, it's very curious for me to think about that, because I'm not so certain about anyone's eternal disposition and or their destination. But I will say this. I know a little bit about Rush's life, and I know a lot about my own. And if Rush made it to heaven, then I have no reason to doubt whatsoever that I will make it too. And if Rush made it to heaven, it's very likely that all of you will too. Not because necessarily you're better than he is, but because many of the things that Rush did are flaws that are common to the family of man. It is common to be addicted to substances. It is common to regard your friends favorably and your enemies with disdain. And it is common to have weaknesses, because that's part of mortality. And if in his weaknesses, he was still able to talk of Christ and refer to him, and people are still thinking about that relationship after he died, then maybe he is willing to accept Christ. Maybe Christ is willing to accept him. And maybe, just maybe, if Christ is willing to accept Rush Limbaugh, he's willing to accept you and me, warts and all, no matter what we do. Godspeed and good luck.